What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode, the inaugural episode, if you will, of The Life of an Entrepreneur. I am Oliver Marcel, and I am an entrepreneur. I am your host for this series. And essentially, what we will be doing is we will be talking to entrepreneurs, those who are the movers and shakers in various industries in both America and in the UK and in South Africa and all over the world. We're going to have a great time having phenomenal conversations that are enriching, that allow you to be introduced to new individuals and also allow you to get some ideas, some tips, some tools, some tricks of the trade, if you will, for those of us who are entrepreneurs and for those of us who are looking to make that leap into entrepreneurship. So that is what we're doing today. Welcome. If you're here, listen, what I would love for you to do is shout yourself out in the comments. Let us know you're here. Let us know you're watching. If it's a replay, if you're watching a replay, let us know you're watching the replay. If you're right here with us live right now, we would love for you to jump in the comments. Just say, "What's up? I'm here. I'm ready to hear what we have to say. I'm here to support you in this journey." So if you're here, jump in the comments. We want to hear from you. So listen, we're not going to take a long time. I'm not going to have a lot to say. You'll learn about my entrepreneurial journey as we kind of go through these episodes. So I'm not going to take a long time to talk about my entrepreneurial journey. But for those of you who are just being introduced to me, I am an author, speaker, and coach in the relationship building and men's empowerment spaces. I wrote a book for men entitled Overcoming the Man Laws for the Man Who Wants to Be His Best Despite What He Was Taught. And I am an entrepreneur. I am on this journey. And so I'm excited to be able to talk to other people who are on this journey as well, because iron sharpens iron. And we want to be able to sharpen each other. We got Damon Braxton in the house. What's up, Damon? Thanks for jumping in the comments. Appreciate you. Thanks for being here. We got Mike. Mike Hatch is in the house. Good to be here. Thank you for being here, man. I appreciate you being here as well. So listen, I got a great guy that I want you all to meet. His name is Ed Crowther. Ed Crowther is a director at Agent and Homes. He is in the real estate industry, and we want to talk about the shifting landscape of real estate in the UK. Now, if you're not in the UK, that's okay, because he's really going to go into some nuances around the differences between what is happening in the UK, what's happening in the US, and how those are becoming they're in a space now where it's kind of beginning to mirror each other. So we want to hear from Ed right now after we say what's up to Verna. Verna Haywood is in the house. Thank you here for being here to support me. So listen, without further ado, let's get Ed in here, man. We need to hear more from Ed and less from me. All right. So Ed, listen, man, it's great to have you here, bro. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you.
It's a pleasure. Thanks. It's a real nice to be the subject of the inaugural episode. So thanks for having me on.
Indeed. And Christiana E. Bird is here as well. Thank you. Congrats on our first episode. We appreciate that as well. So listen, Ed, let's jump right into it. The little bit I said about you doesn't obviously do you not even remote justice, right? So let's talk a little bit about who you are. Like, introduce yourself to the folks. Who are you? What do you do? And then we'll get into a conversation.
Yeah, so Ed Crowther, I'm a director at Agent Homes. I guess my main background is property. I think, like many people, I sort of fell into it in my early 20s. And, I enjoyed it up to a point until, as we'll come on to, I got frustrated with the way the industry sort of worked. I took some time out. I traded derivatives, fixed income futures and options in the city. And then I got sort of pulled back into property again around 5 years ago, mainly with the thrust around sort of Airbnb and my experience in that space.
Okay.
And yeah, it's been great to be part of Agent Homes. And my main space is Airbnb, and also helping people navigate anything to do with lettings.
Okay, got you. So before we get into kind of the nuances of what's happening in real estate, what was that path? Because you talked about you went off and did some other things. You found yourself back in the real estate space, and so what was that path to entrepreneurship for you?
Um, well, look, the initial path was I have to say this was my parents had had enough of me when I was sort of just over 20, and I was sort of bumbling along, and I got a job in London in property. I moved all my stuff down, and away I went. And then I sort of branched off. I have a little bit of my own property. That's how I started doing some Airbnb with that. And then I got quite heavily into trading. I still trade options myself even now. And look, it's one of those things. Once you start being able to be your own boss,
Mhm.
run your own diary, it's quite addictive, and it's not something I would want to go back to. Ideally, working for the man or the corporation or however you want to term it. And that was partly how the philosophy of Agent Home. So we're helping agents become self-employed, and we're looking to fill that gap in the market to show people there's a different way of working by becoming an independent.
Okay, and you mentioned Agent Homes, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about that. But since you mentioned that, let's talk about what Agent Homes does and what is different about their approach in terms of how they help folk become independents in the space.
Yeah, so I'd say I'd probably split it into two parts. So the first part, probably the main part, is we help agents become self-employed. There's I would say, a number of frustrations and pain points that I see in agents who work in a traditional sort of high street corporate environment. I think the two, when I'm talking to people, I definitely hear all the time is number one, why when I get to a certain point, why am I only keeping 10, 12% of the fee, whatever it may be? Because people buy into people, and once an agent gets to a certain point, their phone rings, yet the company they're working for keeps the vast majority of the deal. So that's really the first thing I hear. And the second thing I hear is about I guess, the restrictive nature of it. Funny enough, I was chatting with a guy. He's just about to leave the high street. He's done 5 years. And even now, he's not allowed to leave the office every Monday to Friday on any days between 9 and 12 in the morning and 2 and 4 in the afternoon. And it's just bonkers because, I could instantly tell he's very competent at what he does. As I
Mhm.
just mentioned, his phone was ringing. And we want to help people like that out. You don't want to be just a salesperson. You can do lettings, you can do management, you can do short-term corporate lets. You don't want to be restricted geographically. If my friend, for instance, I work in West London, I just sold my friend's house in Southeast London. And in a previous life, there's no chance I can do that. All I have to say is I will refer you to the other office down there.
Mhm.
And to be honest, in my experience, I don't even get any monetary reward for that. So it's
Wow.
really, our sort of little motto, if you like, is work when you want, work how you want, work where you want. And so it's really opening up, people's horizons so that they can offer a full service to the client. They can go where they want, they can work when they want, and they can, develop multiple revenue streams, but also have flexibility in their lives. If they want to go and see their kiddie's sports day,
Mhm.
whatever it is, that they have their own diary. And I guess the second sort of objective, as it were, of Agent Homes, and a byproduct of that, is that we really want to create more of I know obviously you're in the US, more of a US way of working. So the client, the seller, the landlord, they get one point of contact
Mhm.
instead of having to work with various people and in various offices or whatever it is. You get one professional who understands you, understands your property, and they can sell it, they can let it, they can manage it, whatever it needs, and you just have one point of contact. So I think they're the really two main drivers of Agent Homes.
Okay. So let me clear something up too for those of us who are in the US, right? So when you say let, are you referring to the word rent?
Rent, yeah.
what we would call rent in the US. So just wanted to, for our US folks who are there. I knew that, but I just wanted to make sure that that was out there. So there's a definite advantage to being an independent agent because you have that level of flexibility. From a financial standpoint, there's some advantages. From a flexibility standpoint, there's some advantages. Is this a growing concept in the UK? Because there are some of the nuances that you described are, it's kind of how some agents operate in the US, right? And I know that there's beginning to be some mirroring in the way that things operate. So talk a little bit about what that shift looks like for you guys.
Yeah, so you're in the US, you want to deal in property, you find your local realtor, and that's an individual. You deal with that individual, and they're plugging into a service, and there's a brand helping them out in the background. But really, as I said, people buying to people, and you're dealing with that individual. Uh, in the UK, and it's still the vast majority of the time, if you want to sell your property, you'll deal with a company, and you'll meet the valuer, and then you'll meet various other negotiators.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you want to then let it and change your mind, then you'll get referred to the lettings valuer and all the other different negotiators. So it's a very different way. It's not. Look, it's. I think it's a great thing. I enjoy it. I know a lot of our agents enjoy it. I do have to be even-handed and say it's not easy because you're going by yourself. You will typically deal with a lot less, a lot fewer instructions. So what you do have, you really have to make it count.
Mm-hmm.
And the pressure's on. And obviously, you have your book of contacts, but you need to keep growing that because it will run out at some point. So there's definite advantages. There's a lot more flexibility. You can earn more money if you get it right. You will certainly keep a majority of your fee.
Mm-hmm.
But you really have to stick at it. I think you have to network, and you have to keep reminding anybody in your network, your friends, your family, exactly what you do,
Right.
so that when their time comes to move, you can help them. But the shift is starting. Look, funnily enough, the main sort of, I guess, protagonists of it would be people like Keller Williams, who are a US company.
Mm-hmm.
But there's, in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, there's ourselves and some of our competitors have started filling the space as well. Look, it's in its infancy, but I can see, and I think, with what happened in COVID and things, I think there's more people working multiple jobs now. It's the more gig economy. And we have agents who do other things as well, so it's a plug-in service. So look, if you wanted to be an Uber driver, you could also sell somebody's house via agent homes. We have agents who have other part-time jobs and plug in now and then, do it around that. So I think COVID is people don't want to be cooped up in offices all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They've got used to a bit more sort of autonomy and having a bit of more work from home. And it's a really interesting time and the start of change, I think.
Okay. And listen, I love it. I love that was something that came out of our experience in COVID. Was it almost kind of opened our eyes to the fact that there isn't one path to a certain particular place, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's beautiful for agents who, for individuals. Let's talk to folks who they've been thinking about making the leap into real estate from an agent perspective. Um, we see these shows on TV and it looks real sexy and fun, $1 million listing and all of this kind of stuff, right? So for the guy like me who's like starry-eyed right now, but kind of wants to get into this space and is not real sure about how we do that, outside, of course, of getting with Agent and Homes, what would be your advice to that person who's looking to step into that space?
Well, I think the most important thing is you have to be honest about how many contacts you have, because you are what your network's worth effectively. So you need to be really honest and think about, right, how many people that I know have property, can I deal with property, are they moving soon, do they have property that I can rent out, etc., etc., etc. And I think, from there on in, all the back end stuff, because really technology has been a game changer as well.
Mhm.
Not just, I'm talking about like property portals and the way properties are advertised, but the way tenancies are progressed now. It's all done digitally. The way deposits are protected, the technology around the payment system for your landlords, it's really gone on leaps and bounds in the last few years. So take advantage of that. We almost automate the process in the background for our agents.
Mhm.
They can concentrate on one thing and one thing only, and that's finding new instructions, selling them, letting them, and growing their business. Um, and I think the final thing you would have to do is market yourself well. And from what I've seen, the people in the States, the agents, are much better at that. I think there's a little bit more sort of reservedness in us Brits in terms of really getting ourselves out there and building ourselves up as a personal brand.
Mhm.
And I think we've got to get better at doing that. So whether that's Instagram, LinkedIn, maybe arranging networking things, certainly attending networking events in your local community. I think there's a lot of business to be done at things like your local school. So if your kids are at school, people are always having more kids. They need more space. They need to upsize. They need to sell their place. They need to find a new place. So it's really going deep into your contacts and your local networking, and really squeezing every bit of juice out of your contacts.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a licensing component to the independent space?
There's no licensing, full stop. Funnily enough, I was talking with one of our agents about this the other day. So like I said, when I had to do something with my life, so I came down to London, and I have zero qualifications. Like, I don't
Mm.
have a degree or anything like that. And all of a sudden, I was dealing with. I couldn't even believe the price of things in London to start with. For instance, I didn't know what a leasehold. I didn't understand what a leasehold was. I only knew there was. I thought all properties were freehold houses,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden, I'm dealing with people's most valuable asset. And I have to be completely honest with you. I didn't have a clue uh, at the time what I was doing. So I kind of have two thoughts on that. One, look, I enjoyed it, and I got into the industry, and I managed to work it out. So there has to be a pathway for people to get going. Having said that, if I wanted to manage a little pot of money for somebody, I'd have to do my FCA exams and
Mhm.
be licensed and be regulated,
Right.
and really know what I was doing. And yet, the property, which is in more general, is a lot higher value asset to people. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry can deal with that. Just rock up and
That's
deal with it. But
interesting.
it's not like that in the States, is it? You have to get a license in
Right.
America. You
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. So let me ask you this. Does that does that create apprehension for your clients, or do they even know?
I
Like,
doubt
is that general knowledge? Like, if I'm selling a house in London, is it just general knowledge that the person that I pick just might be somebody who's kind of, I mean this, I'm being funny when I say this, but it's just kind of winging it.
that's a hard question to answer. What I would say is, if you deal with an independent agent,
Mhm.
the chances are that they'll be knowledgeable and have experience, because to have made it as an independent, they will have to have a certain amount of time in the industry and have built up a
Gotcha.
book of contacts. For
Mhm.
instance, if I go back to how I was, I remember my first boss, Mark. He was an exceptional agent, so the client would have met Mark, very, very good,
Mhm.
knows his stuff, and then they would end up having, once he's got the listing, they'd never hear from him again, and then they were stuck with people like me, who is really learning the ropes and learning on their
Mhm.
feet. And so I would say, that's the difference. If you do want somebody who is clued in, who has the experience, you'd be better off finding yourself an independent, because if you go the traditional model, there can be some variation in how you get dealt with.
I'm glad you said that too, because here's the thing, and I'm not discrediting by any means licensure and all of the process that individuals have to go through. But at the end of the day, what you are looking for is somebody who has some experience in this, right? So you who've done this and have experience and know what's going on, to be transparent enough to be like, hey, I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning. None of us do when
Yeah.
we jump into this entrepreneurial space, right? There's some level of process that has to take place, and so I appreciate that, because that's encouraging for the person who wants to go into this and is looking like, okay, man, how are people going to view me? What's the path? Do I need experience? It's almost that catch 22, right? You need experience to get the job, you need the job to get experience, right? So which one is going to come first, kind of thing. And I want to talk about that later on, because I want you to talk specifically to the entrepreneur or the person who wants to be an entrepreneur, and some of the challenges around accountability and process and you know capacity and sticking to it. And I want to switch a gear in terms of talking. We're talking about the agent right now. Want to get some advice from you from the buyer's perspective in just a moment. But before we do that, first of all, shout out to everybody that is in the comments. And I also want to just take a moment to highlight what I'd like to call a sponsor. This is Silver Tree. Silver Tree is a community that is fast, rapidly changing the future of business. Matter of fact, Ed, there's some nuances in terms of that too that maybe we can even touch on. But this community is rapidly changing the future of business. We're going to talk more about this. You're going to hear more about Silvertree and the Silvertree community. If you want to get some information about it, the website is on the screen right now, www.joinsilvertree.com. Again, you will hear more about this as these interviews and these shows continue. But I wanted to make sure that we shout out them. We'll shout out them at the end of this show as well. So again, if you're just joining, we're with Ed Crowther. Ed Crowther is a director at Agent and Homes. He is in the real estate space. Agent and Homes they're doing great things in terms of creating the independent agent, and they are changing the landscape of how real estate is done in the UK at this time. So I got a question for you from the buyer's perspective. Because there's two types of people we're seeing now coming out of the pandemic. We're seeing the people who are like yourself, who want to be on the agent side of things. We're also seeing people who want to be on the landlord side of things. They want to increase their property holdings. They want to increase their portfolio. They want to get into rental properties for the first time. What's your advice to that person who wants to jump in? We're trying to get, what we say in the States, we're trying to stack doors. We want to get as many doors as possible. How do we start that process? What do we do to get our first door?
I mean, that's a really interesting topic at the moment, because what I'm seeing is actually landlords exiting the market, which is pushing up rents. So I still think property is a good investment. Bricks and mortar is bricks and mortar. And I think especially places like London, if you take a long-term view and you hold, it will see you well in the future. Unfortunately, what we're seeing in the last few years from this government is a bit of a war on landlords. So there's been, for instance, landlords can no longer offset interest on their mortgage, and they're having all these sort of things that were advantageous from a tax point of view removed from them. There's been a lot more, we now have to do these electrical fixed wiring certificates, which I get, but I've had some horrendous bills for landlords who've had to rewire their property.
Wow.
And then the two sort of looming things on the horizon is one, it's going to get a lot harder for landlords to evict tenants now. And two, we have these things in the UK called energy performance certificates. And by the year, I think 2025, maybe slightly later, it's in the pipeline that they're going to have to, every certificate is going to have to be a C rating or above. At the moment, it's an E. And the brutal reality is that some of the beautiful old buildings in London, because they have high ceilings and single pane windows, big sash windows, and they're old buildings,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to be able to get them to a C. And
Wow.
the only silver lining for landlords at the moment is that because some landlords are selling up, supply's down and the actual rental prices are up. So that is for the ones who are left. That's a plus, but it's a strange time. It's almost like, to me, the governments are trying to force landlords to sell, and then it's going to be more institutions who are going to buy up the properties. My only, I guess, my only bit of advice would be, if you do have multiple properties, find a knowledgeable accountant or somebody like that who can put them into a limited company for you, and that will help you with things like getting your tax breaks back. It might help you out with inheritance tax and that sort of thing. But if you're just holding them as an individual property your own, you're getting hit from a lot of sides at the moment. And the reality is, it's a tough time for landlords. So my advice, I guess, would be proceed with caution. At the moment, it's a strange time in the UK.
And I'm glad you said that too, because even in the US, right, I think that I think many folk are thinking about this just from an income perspective. Man, if I have 10 properties and each of those 10 properties are paying me $2,000 rent, man, that's a lot of money per month. But what you're saying is there's some research that has to take place. You got to look at there. It's more complicated. There's more to it than that, than just grabbing money, right? There's things that you have to think about from a tax perspective, from a business perspective, from a facilities and logistics perspective. And so I appreciate you sharing that information, because what it does is opens our mind to, like, okay, let's do the research. And here's the thing, for those that are listening, it's not to discourage you, it's actually to ensure that you do things the right way, so that you don't find yourself in some of these scenarios.
Yeah, I think people, you don't want to stretch at the moment either, because as we've seen, with the rise in interest rates, it's been quite rapid recently. If you're on a floating rate mortgage and you have 10 properties and your mortgage has tripled on 10 properties, you're soon going to get into bother. So I think it's about having a sensible view, having as large a deposit as possible, and then trying to fix it at the lowest rate possible for as long as you can. And like you're quite right, I don't want to discourage people. It's just what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And it's not of its pain, but it's the pressure that my landlords are facing. It seems to be various things coming at them from all sides. Yeah.
And listen, I think it's necessary. I think that there needs to be spaces where we can hear individuals paint out the wide picture for us, because that's important. Many times we look at just and this is the life of an entrepreneur, right? So we look at entrepreneurship as this, it's very sexy right now. Like, a lot of people during the pandemic were like, I can't tell you how many videos in my feed, social media feed, I saw where people are like, you need to get your LLC. You need to get your LLC. And so you got all these people just flocking to get LLCs and to start businesses, but we don't paint the entire picture for them. So I appreciate you giving a holistic view on that as well.
Well, just quickly to finish on that, the people that need to hear it is the government, because, like I said, they think they're doing it under the guise of making things fairer. The reality is that rents are soaring, and if they keep interfering in the market and making things harder for the people who have the supply, the price is going to keep going up. But this is a difference. But they're so out of touch reality, these people. But that's a different conversation.
Yeah, it's a relevant conversation, but yeah, you're right. I got a question for you from Mike Hatch, if you don't mind tackling this question. Why do you think landlords are dropping out of the market?
uh, increased regulation, increased government interference, and it's simply it's getting to a financial point where it's not worthwhile them being landlords.
Mm.
Um, so and you add in the triple whammy of if they're going to find it. So we have these things called a Section 21 notice in the UK, and that's basically where after a certain period of the contract has elapsed, a landlord can serve 2 months' notice. The tenant can serve 2 months' notice to end the tenancy. Now that's being taken away from the landlords. And I read the government, it's called a white paper, and I think off the top of my head, only about 8% of tenancies got ended early by the landlord via a Section 21.
Mhm.
So it's not a massive problem yet. The landlords having it taken away from them, and yeah, it's a really tough time. We have increasing amounts of regulation with certificates they have to do, or the cost of it, and I think things like if they do bring in the EPC stuff, that'll just finish some people off because landlords they can't afford to put solar panels or whatever it is
Got
on
you.
the roof
Yeah.
of their properties. And also in London, you're actually not allowed to double glaze the windows in the beautiful old buildings. So
Wow.
again, there's no common sense here, and it seems to be too extreme what's taking place.
Wow, that's interesting. Another question for you, and I guess in lieu of what's happening with landlords, uh, should the focus shift to property, to land, and lots and things of that nature?
Potentially. I have a little Airbnb business,
Okay.
and what I'm seeing is a bit of a shift towards that. So if you come to the shorter end of the market, you get higher, you get more money on a nightly basis, monthly basis, and it's a lot less regulated, and you don't have to. It's just so much easier. You don't have to all these certificates. And I'm actually seeing a bit of a shift towards people thinking, well, I don't want to get tied into a long-term contract, so I might not be able to get these people out,
Hmm.
make more money at the short end. So I'll do, for some of my clients, I do a combination of, I might do a few days, 60 days, 90 days Airbnb, and then for the rest of the year, I'll do a corporate short let in their properties. And if they have small void periods, it doesn't really matter because the increased rent we've got at the short end covers it, and also that kind of fits into the way the way people are. I guess their people's lives have changed. So I have a client in Belsize Park in northwest London, and I think he's had enough of London now after COVID. He's a solicitor. They're allowing him to work from anywhere. So I do corporate short lets in his flat in Belsize Park,
Hmm.
which is a nice area, so it does make good money. And then he pockets the cash, and he gets a nice place on the south coast for a lot less money. So it's almost like Airbnb rental arbitrage.
Right.
So he just some Airbnb hopping, really enjoys it. He's out of London, and he makes a little bit of a profit in the meantime as well. So it's really fascinating the ways people's. I guess it's people's behaviours changing, isn't it? And
Yeah.
yeah.
And you just gave some. I'm pretty sure you just gave some people some great ideas, right? Because that's an area that you spend a lot of time in terms of Airbnb, correct?
Yeah, look, if you wanted to do something different from regular rentals, yeah, Airbnb, serviced accommodation. If you can get a building with 4 separate units in, and you run it well, and again, it's the technology you can take advantage of. So the smart lock technology,
Hmm.
uh, the technology, for your maintenance team, all the jobs will go. You don't even need to be there, so you can do it remotely. And the technology of the CRMs we use to the Airbnb, there's so much stuff you can automate. Uh, and yeah, I think people are looking more towards, serviced accommodation and in those sort of areas.
Man, that's good. Man, this is great information. Listen, we might have to do a part two of this, right? Because this is just as it is in the UK, in the States, this is bubbling up as a really big thing now in terms of people getting property. I just had a friend of mine in Michigan that I went to school with just got an Airbnb as well and just jumped into that space. And so this is something we may have to revisit at some point, man. And if you're willing, have you back on
Will
another
do.
episode of this to talk through this some more. I want to, though, before I let you go, um, we're talking about the entrepreneurial journey, right? And again, it's not to discourage, it's to paint a holistic picture, right? I'm almost willing to bet. I don't have a lot of money, but I'm willing to bet that there's been some challenges along the entrepreneurial journey. There's been some wins, there's been some lessons. What would you say to that person who is, I'm gonna give you two people to talk to. One is the entrepreneur who's on the journey and is discouraged. The other one is the person who is being bombarded by all of these ads and videos that say, hey, you need to be an entrepreneur. What would you say to that person? Like, what's some advice, some tips, some tools you would give to the entrepreneur?
I think for somebody who's currently an entrepreneur or self-employed, or however you want to look at it, um, I would say the main thing I would say is two things. One is for your existing clients, just do a really, really good job, because I'm as well as being involved with the business, I'm an agent as well, so I have my own clients, and the best way to get business is from referrals by doing a good job for your existing clients. The second thing I would say to anybody is network. You have to get out. I go to probably 6, 7 of the same networking events each month. It's about getting your face out there, getting your message out there, so that when somebody who you've met, they might meet somebody who is from a different circle, but they need an Airbnb manager, or they need somebody who understands the rental market, and you want them to be, your face needs to be the first thing that comes to their mind when you see that. So I think they're the two things I would do the most. The third thing, and I'm not gonna, I don't do it particularly well myself, is get online on social media. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I'm some super whiz I'm not. I try a little bit, but I think the days of things being in print and letters, flyers, even emails, I think if that's what you're relying on, I think you're from a little bit of a bygone era at that point. So I would really recommend people to make some video content, so they get their messaging out there, posting. And especially, I personally don't see LinkedIn as a social media platform. I see it more as a business platform. But I think you would be business-like on LinkedIn, and then start making some really interesting content on places like Facebook and Instagram. And they would. And also, the final thing is, I guess, dealing with when things go wrong, or when deals fall through, or when you get told no, you have to keep going. It's part and parcel, of the game, if you like. You have to deal with that, and you have to move on to the next person. That's one thing I found. I used to dwell on things quite a lot, and then I procrastinated. And we were having this chat a couple of weeks ago offline. It won't change the outcome of your next phone call, whatever it is. It will be what it will be. But if you don't go into it in the right frame of mind, you're going to be swimming against the tide. So you need to keep going, be positive, keep making your calls, keep making your follow-ups. And yeah, there would be my few things I think people need to concentrate on.
I love it. Listen, I've probably kept you longer than I should, but there's two things I want you to do. If there's anything that you feel like we have not covered that you really want to get out to the audience, we can do that now. And then I want you to let folk know how they can connect with you as well.
Yeah. So look, I'm in West London. I'm eager to hear from any estate agents who might feel stuck. It doesn't matter where you are in the country. I'm here to help. We're here to help. And yeah, just my details are there. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'd really like to chat with people, see how we can help them. And slightly on a side note, we've only dealt with people who have experience, but I really believe there's other people who could make this work if they're good at networking and they can find the contacts. So, if you believe that you're in a circle where people have property, yeah, please reach out to me. And yeah, I'm relatively friendly and always like to have a chat with people. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And you see on the screen now is Ed's contact information and the website if you want to check out Agent and Homes. You can go to agentandhomes.com. His email is there. He is also on LinkedIn. For those of you who are on LinkedIn, this is I'm going I'm going live on Facebook and on YouTube as well, but LinkedIn is really the home for this show, The Life of an Entrepreneur. So if you want to connect with him, go to LinkedIn and look up Ed Crowther there as well. Listen, Ed, thank you so much
Pleasure.
for this just sharing some time with us. This has been awesome. I appreciate you. And we're going to have to do it again. We're going to have to do it again. We got folk in the comments. They're saying they're looking to get an Airbnb. Uh, Mike says, thank you, Ed. Great information. Yvonne and Michael Bryce and so many others, Verna, that were in the comments, Gunther, and I'm missing names, but thank you so much to everybody who was there. And thank you, Ed, for your time. Listen, we're going to talk in just a few minutes. I'm going to wrap this up and then just stay in here, but we'll talk in a few minutes. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. All right. So that was The Life of an Entrepreneur, Ed Crowther. Make sure that you are connecting with Ed to find out more information. Ed is a guru in the space. I need you to make sure that you are connected with him. If there are other entrepreneurs that you would like to see interviewed on this show, or if you yourself are an entrepreneur and would like to be interviewed on this show, send me an email. It is oliver@denali.org, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn right now, connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, look me up on LinkedIn. You can either look up my name, Oliver Marcel, or you can go to @Denali LLC. If you look up Denali LLC, you can find us on LinkedIn, and we want to hear from you there. Mike says, great job. Appreciate you, Mike. Thank you for being here for this. Let me remind you again before we let you go that you need to find out about Silvertree. Now, I know I didn't give you a whole lot of information about Silvertree. Just remember that you heard that name from me. I promise you this. I'm not blowing smoke. Remember that you heard this name from me. It is going to change the way business is done. I'm involved in a community that is revolutionizing the way business is done. We're going to speak more about what that is and what it entails and how you can be a part of it and how you can contribute and how you can benefit from it. So make sure that you are sticking and staying tuned in with me because you will hear more about Silvertree. So listen, until next time, this is the life of an entrepreneur. It's a good life. It's a journey. Their wins, losses, their benefits. So this is how we're going to live this life. And we're going to talk about what this life is like. So I thank you for being here for this first show. Stay tuned for many more great episodes, great interviews, and some tips and tools that will allow all of us that are on this entrepreneurial journey to see the level of success that we're looking for. Blessings on you. We'll see you soon.